All right, we're back with part 3 of Myra West's video, Get to Know Me and Why I Created This Channel. She said it was going to get dark, and it did. And it might get more dark, so just, I guess, a trigger warning for anybody who doesn't want to hear about such things or kind of process such feelings that they themselves might have about these topics. Yeah, it's rough stuff, but it is beneficial to talk about it, to hear about it, I don't know.
But gotten so much better. As a teenager, I felt so much deep self-hatred, self-loathing. I can't even explain how much I hated myself. I hated everything about myself. I hated my personality. I hated how I looked. I felt completely worthless. I felt like I wasn't worthy of protection. I wasn't worthy of being in any room that I was in. I felt so inferior to everyone around me.
All right, this might be a bit of a side note, but maybe this is just me, and I know I'm abnormal, but I've always gotten along with most people and never, I wouldn't describe myself as cocky or having an ego, really. Like I said, the biggest skill or thing that anybody can have is self-awareness. And I know I'm not perfect. I'm very far from perfect, but I always found school comically easy and boring and dull, and especially outside of school, just seeing the world for what it is. One of the things about school is pretty early on, I thought, these teachers I have, who are they as people? What led them to being a teacher? Mostly because some teachers will talk about things they did, jobs they had before they were a teacher. I remember one teacher, she's a big lady, big presence, not only physically but in presence, and she used to be a police officer. So it just kind of, I remember being a kid and thinking what other jobs have these people had? What led them to being here? What qualifies them to be teaching me? And you kind of notice that they say stuff, but there's an agenda. And I'm talking grade 4, grade 5. I'm starting to realize these teachers majorly have an agenda that they're pushing. They're not telling us a lot of stuff because we're kids, but also there's all kinds of different contexts going on. And I just felt a lot of the subject matter was just so poorly conveyed and so dull, and I just felt like I was grades ahead in certain subjects. And then other subjects I just didn't even like at all. So but I felt like I had a way bigger understanding of a lot of these things. Now, granted, two of my, my whole family went to college and has a leaning towards science and math, and maybe we just talked about smarter stuff than a lot of people. And because my older brothers were so gifted, that kind of led them to being in gifted programs, and that kind of through proxy allowed me to gain more knowledge. And also just listening to my siblings talk to each other and talk to my mom, and the stuff we would watch. I felt like I was way ahead of even the teachers at certain points in elementary school, where I'm oh, well, huh? I remember the when the documentary An Inconvenient Truth came out, I'm like, oh, that global warming thing, that thing I've been hearing about for like 10 years. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, huh? Like, you're in, this is very like introductory level stuff here. Like, what's going on? So, I don't know. I guess on some level, I always felt very smart in that eventually I'd be able to take total control of my life. And maybe me being like the tallest kid in my grade, and then also having these like older siblings who had friends who I considered my friends as well. And it kind of like, I don't know, I just never felt this like inferiority to people around me. I can't imagine feeling like I don't belong in this room. There's times where I feel like I don't want to be in this room. But I don't know, I just can't relate to that aspect of this.
I felt invisible. And because of that, I felt so much anger and resentment and negativity and misery. I was so miserable. Another huge part of this that I didn't even cover, which is like more than half of it, I would say, was that I was struggling with anxiety. And my family didn't believe in mental health. So they never acknowledged what it was to me. They probably didn't even know.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they don't know. They just do not know. And that's fair, right? Like, you're 26, I think, at this point. So your parents wouldn't know. This wasn't a thing like that they mental health isn't a thing that they understand even a tiny bit, even now, or anyone their age understands even a tiny bit. It's just not a thing. It just wasn't a thing in their time. It really wasn't a thing until like 2010 and beyond. So anybody who like went to school before then didn't go to school with mental health being a thing that was talked about. So it's a whole new world, and that sucks. That sucks. And a lot of your anxiety is probably going to stem to you witnessing your parents fighting, having to walk on eggshells, being subject to the judgment that you were. You're going to have an ocean of anxiety, having to deal with all that as a kid, having to exist. You were literally in an environment where you had to be anxious. It was just fundamentally a part of you functioning as a child in your household, was being under anxiety. Was that like you were conditioned to have anxiety, which sucks, which really sucks. But at this point in your life, you've had it for so long, and you at least you know that you can live with it. You can adjust to it, and I'm certain that you've gotten better and better as time has gone on at dealing with it, as calming it down, numbing it down as much as you can, right? Understanding that this is anxiety. I've done this 100 times before. I will get through it. This is just anxiety. I've dealt with it. It's going to be okay, right? And you can also kind of like prepare yourself. Like, hey, I'm likely to have anxiety due to this crappy situation that's ahead of me. It's going to suck. You might have anxiety for months, real bad anxiety for months, but you will get through it. So you having an understanding of it, at least you'll be okay.
They just thought that I was weak, or that I was pathetic, or that I couldn't do things. But that was like one of the main reasons that I hated myself, was because I was dealing with severe anxiety, like general anxiety and social anxiety, that hit me like a truck and completely like ruined I mean, it just took away so many opportunities and so many chances. Sorry,
I mean, you also describe being terrified talking to men in your other recent video. Yeah, that's anxiety. That's everything to do with anxiety.
blush. I'm so sorry. I have to fix that if I can. Okay. That's like breaking the fourth wall almost. Like,
it is.
breaking character.
You look fine.
I'm trying to be as authentic as I can, but it's always hard to talk to a camera. It's hard to be authentic, but I'm doing my best.
It is.
Just know that I'm very aware that I'm on camera, and when you're aware that you're on camera, you can't forget, and it does affect how you come across. Where's my train of thought? Oh,
I mean, it does, for sure. But I feel like I do a good job of escaping that. Maybe the first couple videos I felt incredibly awkward, but you do kind of like escape that and realize, hey, just treat it like you're talking to a person. Now, right in front of me, like what you're seeing in your frame, you're seeing Myra West, you're seeing me, but like Myra West is on my screen. She's occupying an entire screen, and then I have OBS on the other screen. So literally, it's almost like she's occupying two screens. So it's like I'm talking to a person, and I can respond directly to the person. So it's like, it's almost like you're in a video chat and you are talking to the person, but really you're not. You're talking at them, and they're not really talking to you.
yes, just about anxiety. That I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about mental health at the time because, again, we didn't learn about it. I didn't have access to the internet except for at school.
And that's the thing, like me as a kid, I was watching horror films from a young age. We had internet. We, even though we lived in like 2-bedroom apartments, we had high-speed internet my whole childhood and a computer, like a beast of a computer for the time. We're talking like 90s. So that actually set me ahead. Having that high-speed internet in particular, which like almost nobody else had, my age had at the time, and that set me so far ahead of people with computers, right? Because in elementary school you start doing these computer labs and you're doing stuff on these websites and stuff, you're doing internet stuff, and it's like, yeah, I know how to do this. I also felt I was like light years ahead. I was like better in like let's say grade 4. I think it was like grade 5 when we really started computer lab stuff, but like grade 4, I was probably way better than somebody in grade 12 at using a computer and the internet. Like I just had a way better understanding of it because I had done it. And I'd seen my like my siblings do crazy stuff with the internet. It was like streaming movies that were in the theaters. Well, not streaming, but like downloading like torrents and stuff. I remember the what was it? Spider-Man, the original movie with Tobey Maguire. It released in like other countries. Like in it says 2002 it released. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because when I saw it, it was like a year before that. Nobody believed me. Nobody in my grade believed me that I saw this movie, right? Because they didn't even like understand the internet was a thing, really. They couldn't have imagined what you saw Spider-Man. That's coming out like next year. But the thing is, it had the Twin Towers. So I think it was going to come out, or it was set to come out shortly after 9/11. But then 9/11 happened, right? So it never actually released in many countries, just the countries who were like, well, we don't care about 9/11, we're going to release it anyway. And so we watched this, like, it was some Asian country where there was like Asian subtitles across the bottoms. And at one point they laugh when Tobey Maguire's like trying to shoot his web and he's doing different like hand things. And he's like, go web, go. The movie theater, they laughed. And you could tell it was like Asian people laughing. It was interesting. because it was just somebody just recording it on a handy cam of the theater, but it was pretty good quality for the time. Like I saw Spider-Man like a year before it came out in theaters here. No one believed me, but I did, because my siblings knew how to do that kind of stuff, knew how to get those kinds of videos. It was awesome. I was playing like Diablo, like D2. I was playing the original StarCraft. Played Diablo 2: Lord of Destruction, StarCraft Brood War, maybe even Warcraft, if that was online at the time. Like I was playing online games against other people before people my age even really knew what the internet was. It was crazy.
And that was huge. This was when I...
So that led to me being like, why does no one know what the internet is? Like, why are we doing this computer lab where we're like using a word processor? Why, like, I don't know how to do this. What do you mean? Like, we got a printer at home. I can print stuff.
I had anxiety, I still do. But when I was dealing with it, I thought that I was the only one. I thought I was the only one. I thought it was just me. There was something wrong with me in the entire world. Just me. And because of the anxiety, I felt really hopeless that my life would ever turn out well. Because as I wrote in my journals, everything I wanted and everything I wanted to do, everything that was important to me required bravery, and I wasn't brave. I was fearful and terrified, and I couldn't do anything. I felt like I was completely incapable of pursuing my dreams. At the time when I was 18, I was completely debilitated, and I felt like I couldn't move out because I was too scared to try to get an apartment on my own. Everything was terrifying.
Yeah, that would make you feel very small and inferior, and it just that really sucks. Like I said, even though I had a rough childhood and experienced some pretty awful things, I'm lucky to have never dealt with like stuff like that. Now granted, I couldn't afford to move out, but I didn't really have like a strong desire to either. But yeah, I mean, it would have been cool. I definitely wanted a place of my own, but it was more of a want than a need. Whereas for her, she needed to get out of there.
My own, getting a job on my own, like doing interviews, all of it was just debilitating. Fast forward. I guess that's kind of my background. It's kind of why I made the channel, was because of how deeply I was struggling with childhood wounds, anxiety, social anxiety, not knowing what anything was, negativity, self-hatred, horrible self-image.
Now, this is how you kind of like... this is how you move on and progress, is by talking about it. Now, it doesn't have to be through YouTube. And I would advise most people that they don't do it in video form, because it's hard, and you're kind of opening yourself up to a whole host of strange things, like weird people commenting stuff, just true insane things. You're opening yourself up to literal criticism, even though you're talking about like abuse you sustain and your mental health issues. People will still be jerks and like come after you about that stuff crazily enough, and it's not good. But if you don't make videos, or even if you do, find somebody in your personal life, like a close friend or something, somebody you can trust, somebody you can really trust. Now, if you're in your early 20s and you have like big groups of friends, you got to be extremely careful, because those friends might pass on what you said to other people. And if you're trying to keep it just between you and whoever you're talking to, that could become a problem. But ideally, you have someone in your life who you can trust completely, who you can open up to about things you've gone through, because it really does help a lot to talk about it.
Confidence, all of that. And then to have found myself. I hate saying that, but I slowly, since 19 years old, and gaining access to the internet is honestly a huge part of my story. Since researching anxiety and researching self-awareness and researching all the personal growth, self-awareness, all of that stuff, psychology, the more I learned about that and the more I looked inwards and tried to figure out all of my trauma and everything, the more I grew as a person. And there's so many lessons that I learned along the way that
All right, I get that. I totally get that. And I mean, I suppose I've done similar stuff, but I feel like a lot of that stuff is very cushy, very soft-handed, which I can understand why it would be. But to me personally, there comes a time where a soft-handed approach isn't the right approach, which is why I often use a heavy-handed approach, which is why I made a video that was very critical of you. It's not to like judge you or anything like that. It's actually to help with self-awareness and improvement. It's just a different method that because when you look up stuff online, most of the stuff you're ever going to encounter with self-improvement, self-awareness, issues that you have, it's going to be like the most soft-handed approach ever. And that's not always productive, in my opinion. To me, a more direct and intense approach can be. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm just saying it's kind of the belief that I have.
I can never keep up sharing them. Like I share like two things a year here when I'm learning things every day that are just mind-blowing. Having epiphanies and like connections, and things are making sense, and I'm growing and blossoming and transforming as a person.
Now, this video literally provides a ton of context. You not having access to the internet until 19 is a huge thing. Like, that's enormous. Like, I had access to the internet when I was like 4 years old. Like, I remember a pre-Google internet. So... And the internet also has like just become a bigger and bigger thing as time has gone on, to where it's at your fingertips all the time on your phone, which is just so dramatically different. And it's not the internet is like the most extreme example, because it's going to give you just so much information and open you up in so many ways. And it's also just you existing in a very like sort of isolated community in a sense, right? Because when you have a big family, a lot of times it's like, yeah, all right, they'll be fine because there's a bunch of them. They can hang out with each other. They can kind of like, they'll watch each other. They'll be okay. They're watching each other. They're stuck with each other. So you even within your household, even within your immediate family, you kind of create a community in and of itself. And so that's even further isolating, as well as that isolating of not having access to the internet. So it's just, it hugely formed who you are, and it kind of explains a lot of why I believe that you are kind of very sort of behind the eight ball, they say. and kind of playing catch up. But that's fine. That's fine that you are. I would say it's very normal. I literally say this in videos that an adult, and when I say an adult, I mean somebody who like grew up with the internet, somebody who has access to the information that we have today, should be able, especially with how the internet has evolved. I mean, I say that somebody should have themselves fully figured out by the time they're 23. You're only 26. That's not that far off, really. But with the internet being as more available, not just to you but to everybody. Like I said, it's on your phone. It's with you all the time now. I'd say maybe even lower what the regular expectation would be for somebody who grew up with the internet. I'd say by 22, with the access to information that we now have, by 22 is now my standard for when somebody should have themselves like mostly figured out, like 80% of themselves figured out, and not just like finding who you are, but working towards how to live a happy, productive life, which is incredibly complicated, which involves dealing with trauma and all the issues you have with friends and family and your life, and like having, at least starting to like work on every issue that you have, being like, enough's enough. To me, by the time you're like 21, you should be like, all right, enough is enough. I've got issues. I don't want to have issues. Enough is enough. And then you start the process, which should take a year or two, where you say, I've got these problems. I want to change. I want to get better. I'm going to start working to change those problems. Which I feel like you're doing that. You're just doing that a little later, which makes sense because you just some of the basics of not even necessarily dealing with self-improvement, just like basic like functional practical things of being an adult that are heavily elevated through use of the internet. You've had to catch up on that stuff in your early 20s, right? Like just the practicality of actually using the internet you've had to catch up on, which is so crap. Like, it just makes that kind of stuff makes me mad, because it's like your parents set you up for like failure. They set you up for the delay that you've experienced. And nothing makes me more upset than bad parents.
And I wanted to say, to like honor that past self, and to honor anybody who's where I was, and I still struggle with lots of these things. So I'm still with you. I'm not like saying, oh, I was that, I'm not anymore, I'm all great now. I'm still with you in it. I like to say, like, in the trenches. Yeah. I'm there with you. But to honor you and to honor me back then, I want to say that I was a very intelligent teenager, and I was extremely self-reflective and mature for my age. I was always thinking very deeply and always trying to figure out myself and the world. I was very, very, very self-reflective. So that wasn't the problem. The problem was, you only know as much as you know. And when I was 14, 15, 16, blah, 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 you only have a brain that's 14 years old. A brain that's 14 years old. It can't know more than it knows in those 14 years. And when you're those ages, even at 20, at all those ages, you think like, I should have it figured out. Like I should know this. Like I should know how to solve this problem. But you don't, and that's okay. Like it's not shameful in the least, because
well, I mean, I don't exactly like the terminology of like, a 14-year-old brain. I would just phrase it differently, but how I would phrase it is like that you just don't have the experience. You don't have the knowledge. You don't have the wisdom. You haven't put the pieces together. You haven't experienced enough to be able to think about it in the way that an adult would. You don't have the skill set yet. You haven't developed it. You just don't have the experience. You don't have the experienced brain, which I think is what you're saying. This idea of like a brain of a certain age kind of makes it sound like your brain like can't function at that level, and it can. It just won't because you don't have enough like experience to be able to.
I believe strongly that you can be an extremely intelligent and self-aware and like in self like.
I finally got a really good pause over. Now there is 14. Not gonna lie, myself, me at 14 had better math skills and science skills than most of the people in my STEM program had. No offense to anyone, but yeah, and that's in a competitive STEM program, so you can imagine like regular adults.
Sorry, I'm losing that word, but like self-focused person, not in a bad way. I'm like self-reflective. That's what I was trying to say. But you can be all of those positive things, but at the same time, you can't know. Sometimes you just don't know how to solve the problems. And that's where it comes in to learn, to research, to listen to people who are older than you, to learn about psychology. It's the most important thing you can ever.
The most important thing you can ever do is actually the thing you said right before that. Listen to people who are older than you. There is nothing more valuable. Like I do say, the most valuable thing is self-awareness. But part of that is utilizing the self-awareness. Self-awareness is understanding what you know, kind of sort of what you know and what you don't know, what skills you have, what skills you don't have, who you are. And part of that is understanding that old people with more experience, know stuff that you don't know, and utilizing that. So it ties in. It is self-awareness that is leading to also utilizing people with experience, people who have gone through the same things, people who have done the things that you want to do. They will help you get there because they know they've done it. They've gone through it. They know more than you do. They have a different perspective, a different worldview. Think of what you just said with being 14. You don't have the experiences. Think of your 14-year-old self. Your 14-year-old self is a jabroni compared to who you are now, because you just have so much more experience, so much more context of the world. You understand everything better. You connect the dots. You see things for what they truly are, which you weren't exactly able to do when you were 14. So now you can, and now you're so much better. Well, think about that. That actually extends to any age, right? Like there's no better advice I can get from anyone on the planet than someone who's like in their 50s, in their 60s. You know, you get much older than that, you start getting into areas of, the mind starts to go. It starts to wander a little bit. But, I mean, you can be older than that. You can be in your 70s and still be pretty sharp. But, yeah. An older person, somebody who's, because somebody might have experienced things multiple times. So, you got to utilize that. That is so important.
Never do. There's so many important things. But I slowly, gosh, there's just so much about me.
And there's, I mean, granted, there are tons of old people who are just total morons, just total buffoons. Just they have no idea about anything. There are people out there who haven't like experienced anything. There's people out there who are old people who in their 60s where they've never really done anything. They don't really have any experiences. They don't really know how to do anything. That does exist. It's uncommon though. It's shocking. I've encountered some people, like I know some people in their 40s where they almost can't even function. Like people in their 40s who should be able to function as a normal adult in society, and they just can't. Right? They don't even have the excuses of they drank their brain away, they shot up their brain away, they smoked their brain away. There's people who should be functioning members of society. They just can't be. It's sad, and luckily it's a rarity.
Like, to try to get people to understand where I'm coming from, there's so many things I just assumed that people would know, but there's no reason they would know that. But I wanted to also say, and I'll go into this later, but because of my childhood and family, I developed this self-image because they put it on me. My self-image, I knew it was wrong and something was wrong with it, but they placed upon me that I was the black sheep and that I was a bitch. And I became that way because you had to put on your armor or be destroyed. And anyone who's from like an abusive, physically abusive environment or like family, you know what that feels like. But I think other people don't know what this feels like, to like completely build yourself into this alternate version of yourself that is not you at all, but you just build these giant walls.
I don't know what that's like at all. I've never had to do anything like that. I've just always been myself, and I've always been very comfortable in myself. Now, granted, I have anxiety. I feel uncomfortable because of anxiety and stuff like that. So, like, but, like, I've never had to, like, fake who I am or be anything other than what I am, and I've never been remotely unhappy with what I am. In a certain context, I mean, I'm not happy that I have anxiety. I'm not happy that I was depressed in my like teenage years and early 20s. I don't like that. It was not great. There's certain other things that I don't like. I don't like that I was sick for like my entire childhood into like pretty much until I was 17. I was also very sick. Allergies. I have pretty much some of the worst allergies that you can have without like suffocating and dying. Now, granted, I did almost suffocate once, but that was because of an allergic reaction to an allergy medication that intentionally gives you an allergic reaction. But that was a one-time thing. But I was, just incredibly uncomfortable and in pain from literally probably the time I was born until I was 17 years old. And then I got on some heavy duty medication and things got way better. And I was no longer constantly sick. So that's great. But yeah, I've never had to put up a front, never had to like walk on eggshells to that level.
Hard as stone around you to protect yourself, but it turns you very spiky and you don't like that person. But as I moved, like right when I moved out from my family, I didn't have to be that person anymore who was just surviving, fighting for survival. I could just try to be me. But the only problem was, because of the Christian upbringing, the conservative Christian being drilled into me, spankings every night,
Whoa, 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 whoa. Spankings every night. What? Every night? What is that? Jeez.
and because of the abuse and that turning me into like this hard as stone character, I didn't know who I was, really. I had to discover it. I had to learn. And like on top of it, it was so strange. I was like this hard as stone person with my family, but with everyone else growing up, I was a huge, massive people pleaser and terrified of rejection. So I just gave everybody what they wanted and tried to be the version that they wanted me to be. And like in terms of romantic relationships, which I just had one at that time, I just gave him everything. I just tried to be the perfect woman and gave him everything that I thought a man wants. So many versions, like so much of me just trying to survive. Like each of those personas were just me trying to survive. And like in school, I was a people pleaser, or sorry, not people pleaser, sorry. Like for the teachers, I was such a teacher's pet, which I don't quite regret because I really liked the teachers and I got along with them really
No,
well.
that's a skill that, like, you probably don't want to be a teacher's pet in like elementary school, but in high school, yes. And it kind of depends on how a teacher's pet you are. Because I would say in college, one critical skill that goes very overlooked is sucking up to the teacher. You'd be crazy to think that wouldn't benefit you directly. It does. It's something you got to do. Why not? Why not schmooze the teacher? Especially when they can just directly help you.
But at the same time, I was trying so hard to be like a perfect straight A, straight-laced student. And it was interesting because like I grew up in a household where like my dad drilled it into me to be the perfect like straight A person, the goody two-shoes, the straight-laced, morally perfect. And so I thought that that's what like society wanted me to be, and that's how you're liked and accepted. And in school, it made me somewhat disliked because I came across as like pretentious or better than you. But really, it was just me going off of what I knew at the time. So yeah, all of those personas I had to break through in my 20s, starting from 19, but in my early 20s. And I did that by to try to break through the impenetrable walls and coldness and like self-protection that I had, where I felt like vulnerability was total and complete weakness. I started in my early 20s opening up to people.
Yep, critical, absolutely critical. Yeah, I don't really see much of a downside. Now, granted, some people can be crazy and can use things you say against you, but a lot of like friendships you have, especially in your early 20s, they're kind of gonna fade away anyway, and it's mostly just upside to opening up to people. It's gonna help you.
Very, very slowly. And it's like it's doing the exact thing that you are terrified to do. You're most afraid of showing yourself and being rejected and told that you are what you think you are, worthless, and something's wrong with you. But I knew somewhere in me, and maybe it's from what I learned, but I knew that the only way through it was to become vulnerable and put down those walls. And I can get into this so much more eloquently in a different video, but that was such a huge reason why I couldn't make friends. And at the time that I recorded that video and had those struggles was that I really expected that if somebody cared about me, they would care enough to slowly tear down those walls and that guardedness. But that's not anyone's responsibility.
Well, yes, absolutely. That's 100% correct. Now, what she's referring to is one of her first videos was talking about how she doesn't have any friends. It's got like 6.7 million views. But yeah, it's not anyone's responsibility to tear down your walls and get through all these obstacles you put up. It's on you to remove those obstacles and open up to other people. And I'm glad you understand that.
That's almost as if people are rescuing you. And
that's totally reasonable for you to like feel that way and want that, because you were lost, you know. It's reasonable that you would be so lost at that point in your life because you barely had any time to like get to know yourself, which isn't your fault.
Only person who it's the only person responsible for doing that work is you. If you're super avoidant and you have those walls, you need to work on learning how to become more vulnerable, even though it's terrifying. So the way that I did it was I started sharing tiny little pieces of myself with people, my true self, the things that I kept hidden. But it wasn't like these massive, huge secrets or anything mind-blowing. It was just this tiny little fragment of me. And when I shared it, every time, there was positive reinforcement to it. People appreciated it. People appreciate vulnerability. They appreciate seeing the authentic you. People don't appreciate perfection. They don't appreciate fakeness. They appreciate flaws. People really like when you share your flaws and your weakness. It makes people feel close to you. So yeah, throughout the years I've worked so hard, and I still do it constantly, sharing vulnerability with people. Because vulnerability is powerful and it's brave. It's the most brave thing you can do. And then to work on my people pleaser personality.
I mean, it is incredibly brave, but I would say, yeah, like fighting a bear is a little braver. Putting yourself at extreme risk to protect somebody else is a little braver. Running into a burning building to like save somebody is a little braver, but I'm just nitpicking there.
And the goody two-shoes personality, those are just cover-ups. That wasn't who I was. I've just been working so hard the past many years to become more authentic. To first of all get in touch with who I am by figuring out what my opinions are, what my beliefs are, what my values are, what everything is, like what I value in the world, and also learning to accept myself where I am and not compare myself to anyone else, to embrace who I am, to embrace my personality. All of those are just choices that you make. Through that and authenticity, I've been working on I feel like I'm pretty much, well, maybe I haven't completely tackled it, but...
Now, when I hear stuff like that, obviously it's all great stuff, but anytime I hear somebody say something like that, I kind of wish that I could like hang out with them for a day, because one thing that I like to do, right, is compliment people, and really compliment them in a very sincere way, because as you can probably tell if you've watched my videos, I like to think deeply about any kind of topic and really give it like a full, intense thought. And I've always found that I can give really amazing compliments and really kind of see the pros and cons of somebody and see the good in them and really highlight that. So many people, especially people I've dated, have said that a compliment that I gave them is the greatest compliment they've ever gotten. And that's just because I actually bother to get to know them and see what their strengths and weaknesses are and see what good they bring to the world and just simply highlighting that. So yeah, I wish I could do that.
I'm so much better with that people pleasing me.
But like you said, it's so hard on YouTube. It's not like you can't really fully express yourself. No one can really get to know you. None of your viewers truly know you, not even close, and they never really can. So it's not the same, right? So like actually spending time with somebody, you actually can get to know them on the level to where you can give them that like compliment that knocks their socks off, right? Like for me, some of the best compliments I've ever gotten was from coworkers just reaching out to me and saying, you know what? I love working with you. Like it is an absolute game changer working with you compared to working with other people. Like you make it a fun time. You're lighthearted. You're easygoing. You work hard. You get the job done. It's just easy breezy working with you. Other people, it's difficult.
Sure. I think I'm still struggling a lot trying to put boundaries in place with dating relationships, romantic relationships. But basically just learning that like everything we learned to survive in childhood was wrong. What we learned to survive in childhood does not help us in adult healthy relationships.
Yes, absolutely. You learn exactly how not to be as a household, as a family, as a relationship. You learned how to do it entirely the wrong way. And so for you, you're going to, in your formative years, you're going to see that as normal, as being how things are supposed to be, how people express love. And it's not. It's not the way it's supposed to be at all. It's so unhealthy, so toxic. And it sucks. It sucks so bad. I wish more parents would be more responsible.
I'll just end that. I feel like if I listen to this again, I'm going to be disappointed in myself for not saying that eloquently enough or clear enough. But
No, so far this has been one take, which is great. Like you've done a great job for it being one take. A lot of people, they forget that context, even though they're watching a YouTube video, even though they're watching you. And this is literally, you turned on a camera and talked to it and shared your thoughts. People, for some reason, discredit that as though it's like lesser than a scripted video with a ton of cuts. Like, no, it's actually better. It's more real. If that it's not rehearsed and scripted.
It's a lot of like my background in like why I share things vulnerably, and I think people don't realize that it's so not me to do that. It's becoming more me, but like it's so out of my comfort zone and so terrifying to do. But it's a challenge to myself, and it's a facing fear. That's another thing. As far as the anxiety, I think another thing that really bothers me like crazy is when people say things so out of touch about me, saying that like I live according to fear and I'm terrified of everything and I let my anxiety control me and like I don't challenge myself, etc., when the entire point of my channel.
Well, you do describe yourself as being very controlled by fear. Literally in a recent video you said you basically are just terrified to talk to men in general. Now, when you say that and you don't emphasize that that's a huge giant problem that you need to overcome, then it comes across as though you're just allowing yourself to be entirely ruled by your anxiety and your fear, right? So that's kind of a fair statement that people make.
And the entire point of my life and my goals in life are to constantly face fears and challenge myself and do the thing that I'm most afraid of. And that's not difficult to do because I'm scared of everything.
Exactly. And that is difficult. And you, up until you uploaded this video, which you uploaded yesterday, you haven't really clarified any of this. So it's a fair thing for people to think about you. Now, I think people saying, like, are you a lesbian, is way too far. That is making, like, some very bold assumptions. But I think people just say that to be funny. It's not very funny, but I don't know.
And luckily, the more you face it, the more you can teach your brain that it's not as scary as your brain thought it was. Your brain fears the unknown. So once you make it known, it's less scary. That's a huge nugget right there. Take it. So I challenge myself constantly, and I've grown as a person. I face my fears all the time. I'm a very fearful person, but at the same time, I'm a very, very, very brave person. And every day I get more in touch with strength. And,
strength!
Yeah. There's just so many, like, things that I've learned that are so powerful and so helpful that I still need to share, and I always think about all the YouTube videos I need to record, but there's so many, there's too many, but I really want to record videos on building confidence, building self-love, building self-acceptance, building self-esteem, inferiority complex, self-hatred, misery, depression, negativity, positivity, all of that. What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, that in my early 20s, like at 20, 21, maybe 22, I went so hard into the self-improvement stuff, and I was really into it. Self-improvement, challenging myself, pushing myself, being productive, and I got so burnt out, and I realized that it was so bad for me because it just makes you feel like crap all the time.
Now, I do not have a similar experience to that. Now, for me, there was a very specific time constraint. I said, I want to go to college at this point. I want to go to college in, like, I think probably like 8 months. And I'm like, I was already on a path of self-improvement, but I'm like, all right, I need to get this figured out before I go to college. I need to do everything that I can. But I also allowed myself the room to understand that it's going to be very difficult, that I'm going to ramp up and solve every single problem that I have. And I'm going to dedicate the time that I need to. And, like, I was unemployed at the time, so I had a lot of time to do so. And that involved, like, talking to my family, talking to friends, exploring things. And not everyone's just going to have, like, that time at their disposal like I did. But I did it, and I focused on it, and I allowed the painful parts to be painful and the really brutal parts just be brutal. And just gave it a very concentrated focus. But I'm also lucky that I was able to very quickly determine what I needed to do, how I could change. And a lot of that comes down to confidence. I've never really lacked confidence and self-awareness. So that kind of allowed me to accelerate what I was doing in a major way. That I could see how people wouldn't exactly be able to do that. So it is what it is. It's different people. Everyone's different. different situations. Yeah.
Makes you feel not good enough all the time. And I realized also that it wasn't even what I wanted. Like, I didn't want to be in like a constant productivity mindset. Like, I actually value peace more, and serenity and slowness.
Yeah, these lunatics like Andrew Tate, where they say you need to be waking up at 5 a.m. You need to be grinding. You need to be making money. It's unfortunate because these types of people, there's kind of like a hidden message in there of like self-improvement, working on yourself, growing as a person, moving forward with your life and progressing, which is a really positive message. But then it gets lost in the weeds and it becomes this horribly negative thing, as you can't dedicate all your time and all your focus to self-improvement. Really, major self-improvement should take a couple of years. It should take a year or two, and that's like optimal. That's like it's hard for me to like see super far outside of the own context of myself, being somebody who is intelligent and very skilled and very self-aware and comfortable in myself and confident. So maybe it would take a little longer. Maybe it would take like 3 or 4 years for some people. But that focusing only on improving yourself and improving your financial situation, like Andrew Tate promotes, you're just kind of enslaving yourself. You're being too harsh on yourself. Relax. Like, there should be a period of a couple years where you have a pretty concentrated self-improvement. And that doesn't mean like all day, every day, this is all you think about, but maybe an hour a day. And then certain days, maybe spend an entire day. But that should be very rare. Maybe spend half a day, once every 2 months, being like, what are all my problems? How am I going to fix them? What is the path forward? I need to progress. And that should only be like a relatively short part of your life. Like I said, maybe 2 years, maybe 3, maybe 4. And then you move on to just sort of a passive self-improvement, which is kind of what you're describing, where it's like, I'm going to continue to improve, but I'm not going to put pressure on myself. I'm going to allow myself to improve. I'm comfortable with where I am. Now I just got to coast. I'm going to continue to self-improve and learn and grow and learn from other people's experiences and do all the right things, but it's just going to happen naturally.
So I got out of that, and actually that caused me a huge amount of depression when I was really into the self-improvement stuff. And when I got out, I focused more on self-acceptance and self-love. Meeting yourself where you are. You are good enough where you are. And I made up this quote that I shared that I really liked, which is, sure, I'm just paraphrasing, I forgot what it was, but sure, you can become a better person using sheer self-hatred. Like, you can use self-hatred as a motivator to improve. But if you use self-acceptance and self-love and embrace yourself where you are, you will bloom. And there's such a huge difference between using negative motivators to change yourself into something that you think is worthy of love.
Yeah, I've never really used self-hatred. I mean, I guess I have in certain things, like one thing in particular, but that was like not one thing of like 100 things, right? So it's like, all right, the huge majority of your self-improvement should be just positive focus, saying like, I deserve to be better. I deserve better. I deserve to be better. I'm going to be better. I love myself. The problem is that it's true that you can't love anybody else until you love yourself, but you can't love yourself without knowing yourself. So you kind of get in this weird paradox where you can't. I feel like you can't 100% know yourself without utilizing other people. So oftentimes, you do kind of need to love somebody else in order to find out who you are, in order to love yourself, to then qualify for loving other people properly. It's a complicated thing.
When you can love yourself as you are, and like, yes, of course, there's a balance. Find the balance. Yes, self-improvement is needed, and for me, the most valuable thing for everybody, please, everybody listen, the most important thing is self-awareness and figuring out your...
This is exactly what I say. I've said that like so many times on this channel.
Your trauma, your triggers, and what everything means internally. Figure out all of that internal crap. Because I also learned, I feel like people are not very self-aware, like lots of people, and this is like...
Yes. So I watch the shows. I watch reality competition shows, Survivor, Big Brother, The Challenge, various other shows, and the competitive ones in particular. You'll watch the show Big Brother. I don't watch the American version anymore because it's gotten way too like weirdly political, too much production influencing the cast. And casting the same kinds of people, just terrible as of late. But in its heyday, when it was good, you'd find every single season that people get out early because they just totally lack self-awareness. And like almost half of the cast, if not the majority, every single season, they get voted out of the house because they just lack self-awareness. They just get ahead of themselves. They don't realize what's going on around them, how they exist in this group, in society in general, how other people around them perceive them, what their strengths and weaknesses even actually are, how they come across. They just never consider like any of it. It's like a skill that they just entirely don't have. And so watching these shows, growing up watching these shows, made me kind of also realize like, hey, that's insanely valuable. Like there's this guy, Dan Giesling, on the American version of Big Brother, where this guy just oozes self-awareness. This guy is just incredible at self-awareness. And so he's going to do incredibly well anytime he's on the show. Right? Now he could have done better in The Traitors, but let's forget about that. And even in The Traitors, he could have just been a little less sketchy, and he would have done great. He let himself slip in his self-awareness, and it cost him. Like look at CT from The Traitors season 2. Guy has tremendous self-awareness. That's why he plays a great political game every season of The Challenge he's on, and why he played a great political game on The Traitors. It's what he does. It's how he does it. Doesn't surprise me at all. Like him and Trishelle. Well, Trishelle a little surprised me, but like I knew she'd do well, but not that well. But CT, oh yeah, I'm like, this guy's incredible. So thinking about self-awareness early on into watching these shows, like I realized this in my teenage years, and so I kind of noticed it in people in my everyday life, and you quickly realize, holy crap, like self-awareness is just entirely lacking in like almost half of everyone. It just almost doesn't exist, and then in the other half, it's pretty scarce in a lot of people.
Constantly shocking to me that I feel like people don't know themselves, and I love everybody who watches my videos and I appreciate them, but I do get comments of people in like their 60s and 70s and this and that, and they say like, wow, what you just said, I've never thought of that before, I've never heard that, and that just makes me feel like people are not thinking enough about the important things. The important things are what's going on internally in yourself and in other people. What?
Yes. And that's exactly what I mentioned earlier. Is people got to understand, they don't know you. They don't know me. They don't know you. They don't know really anybody they're watching at all. They don't know you. Which is probably why you feel like annoyed with their judging of you and their lack of knowing of you, which is why you're making this video, is to kind of clarify some of these things. But even within that clarification, they still don't know you. They're still like light years away from actually knowing you. And there's only so much that they should know about you. There's only, people get so parasocial and they think that they know you, but they don't. And they in a lot of ways, they shouldn't know you to the level that people know you in your personal life.
What's going on beneath the surface of every single interaction? Okay, so many little talks there, but I want to share a couple more things about me. I was very conservative growing up. And that made me just a follower, just accepting whatever was given to me, which was just complete and total indoctrination. So I was very misogynistic. I hated women. I believed all women were below men and should submit to men. I was very Republican, even though I didn't know what much of it meant. And those two things slowly shifted as I got older. And it's been so strange to pull out the internalized misogyny and hatred towards women, to pull that out and work through it.
Well, you also should understand the context that most people, what you've experienced in your life is very not what most people have experienced. So your ideas of conservatism are kind of more so shaped by a crappy childhood and your family specifically. Most conservatives aren't anything like your family. So be careful not to there's because it doesn't matter. You live in America, it doesn't matter. Both parties are the same. There's an election soon. Kamala is may as well be a Republican, and Trump may as well be a Democrat. There's no difference in your two parties. It's meaningless. It's more of ideology behind it. There is way too many Christian conservatives in America, but to me that's more of a Christianity thing than a conservatism, because conservatism to a lot of people is the idea that America has had some tremendously great things, right? They stopped the Nazis. They developed a lot of wonderful things. They stopped the Japanese, to be fair. People often forget that the Japanese did some pretty heinous stuff in World War II. So it's and let's not forget, Russia also stopped. Pretty much Russia and America rolled into World War II late and put the boots to old Germany and Japan. And so people think of when the American dream actually existed and wanting to go back to that, thinking of when America was this was the greatest country in the world, and they want to go back to that. They want to bring back some of those values, right? And ideally I would hope, and on many levels I don't care, I hate politics, but I would hope that those people want to bring back the good things about America's past and not bring back the bad things, like the dogmatic Christianity and the patriarchal structures and injustices and inequalities, because that would be ridiculous. Why would you want those things?
And change. And I've gotten to such a good place where I no longer hate women. I actually really love women, and this is so crazy to say, but it's just been the last 2 years where I can genuinely love and appreciate strong, powerful women and like admire them and respect them and see them as like, wow, you're incredible, like goddess energy, like all of that stuff, to really admire women, when I was taught to look down on strong or powerful or independent women.
That's something that's also very sus about religious people, particularly religious men. Like, I get they want to subjugate women and they want just some submissive woman, but at the same time, like, why? Like why would you want that? It's so bizarre. It just seems like, I don't know. It just seems kind of gay, like to not appreciate a woman who's herself and like confident and strong and like outgoing and funny and having personality and opinions. It's not. There's no other way to describe it but gay. To not value those aspects of women, like, it's just, how could you not? To me, as a like very straight man, it's weird. It just comes across as very sus. Religious guys, like, your obsession with men is very, very gay.
And to be like disgusted by them, all of that has changed. I've worked through that, but that's kind of more of my background. Very conservative, very Republican, and then gradually shifting my thoughts and opinions and everything to be more what I consider more like rational and loving and like normal. Like,
I wonder if I'm gonna get backlash for these videos, because I mean I'm coming for religious people, and I come for them hard in these these videos here. Didn't know it was gonna go in that direction when I clicked on this video, but it's where it went, and I don't like to hold back in my life, in my personal relationships. I like to be very honest, very direct, very forward thinking, very positive, and part of positivity is understanding the negativity. Negativity exists in the world. It exists in all of us. We need to learn to coexist with it, function within it, and you can't get positive outcomes without criticizing negativity. And to me, a lot of aspects of religion are very negative, and I like to be an honest person with everybody, so I'm going to be honest, and that's how I feel.
Not to be on the fringes of like just craziness.
I mean, I also in these videos said most religious people like aren't intensely into religion. They're pretty chill. A lot of people like who would say that they're religious, or like, hey, well, I remember somebody saying, I'm not religious, but I go to church once a year, just in case. I feel like that's how a lot of religious people exist. They aren't even going to church, but they're like, yeah, well, I guess Jesus, whatever. Like, and then they're some of the most inappropriate, least religious people you'd ever imagine.
And I don't even like associate myself with those old beliefs, because I don't even think those were me. I think it was purely what was indoctrinated into me, and I feel like the only thing I've done is just get in touch with who I've always been and what I've always believed. Like, I've never really gotten into this because it's so uncomfortable for me, but I was taught to be very anti-gay, and as a teenager I just was.
In my going to a Mormon church as a kid, there really wasn't any of that at all. I like literally. Now, I only went there until I was about 10 years old. Then my family just stopped going. So there was never an anti-gay thing. And one of my friends growing up was a gay dude. And I know, like, I know coming out is like a big part of like gay people's lives, but yeah, I like, you know, clearly he was gay from a very young age. Like there's certain characteristics that kind of, you know, whatever. Gay dude, cool guy, great guy. I don't know. Never thought anything less of him. Never thought anything less of any other gay people. I got tons of gay friends. But like I said, the religion exists in very different levels all over the place.
But I didn't understand anything about it. We didn't really talk about it. Nobody explained what it was. Like, we were just taught to do it. And as children who love their parents and think their parents know everything, that...
Another thing that's incredibly gay about religious people, like the very religious people, is their focus on gayness. Like, I've seen videos of religious people talk about, like, gay butt sex and, like, just wild stuff that I would never think about. Like I said, I have, my childhood friend, gay, always knew he was gay. Never once have I ever thought of his butt or him doing anything to another man's butt. Never. It's never crossed my mind once. Never. 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 I didn't even intend for that to zoom in. Oh God. We'll continue.
It's just how it was. But I met a few people who were gay, who were our neighbors or people who helped us out or this or that. And I remember, like, even though my beliefs said one thing, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this person seems like a really nice person. And I think I even remember telling my dad that. I was like,
there we go.
I don't understand it. Like, they just seem like a really good person, like a nice person. So those things weren't connecting. And it was literally just exposure to people that were...
And like I said in a different video, reacting to Courtney Ryan, the greatest wingman, and this was a while ago in a video, the greatest wingman I ever had was a gay guy. Because if you think about it, like, in a logical kind of way, it instantly makes a ton of sense as to why a gay guy would be, like, the greatest wingman.
Different than, you know, that helped me to understand. And then of course I've done my own research on it, and now I feel really good about my understanding, and of course I can get better, but totally changed on that, obviously. And I feel like lots of guilt and shame for my previous perspective, but I can't be too hard on myself because I never believed it. It was just forced down my throat as a child, and people believe anything that is told to them from, like, infancy. Like, your brains are very malleable, and you're very, like, you will believe whatever's told to you when you're a baby and growing up. That's just sadly how it is. So I don't know. I love animals. And animals are very close to my heart as well, and anything nature and environment related. I need to think. I'm an artist. I feel like people don't know these things, but
Show some of your art. Show it. I demand you show it. Show it off.
I'm an artist. That's my biggest strength, is art. I love music. Music is, like, so powerful to me. I'm I was going to say emotional, but that's not the word. I am not emotional, but I do feel emotions very deeply. I also feel like I'm, like, the perfect mix. To me, I really do. I hate saying that, but I do think I'm, like, a really good mix of about 50-50. where I have like 50% really strong, powerful emotions that I can experience the world through, and then another 50% I'm very, very rational and logical, and that keeps my emotions in check. That's what I mean. And I really appreciate that. Intellectual stuff, that made me sound super intelligent, but my favorite thing to do in life, my favorite thing about life is to think. I love thinking. I love anything that is intellectual, anything, learning and thinking about anything regarding the brain, psychology, mental health, relationships.
I'm kind of the exact same way. I love thinking about stuff. I love talking about stuff. Like, I can talk to somebody directly, one-on-one, for hours and hours about things. I remember one time, me and my buddy talking through how the time travel works in the Dragon Ball Z series, because like a character travels forward in time and back in time and forward, this guy Trunks, and just thinking about like what timelines that creates and how complicated it is. I literally can't even remember the conclusion that we came to of how it actually works, but we like talked about this on like 2 separate occasions because it was so like absurdly complicated that you had to like think about it on that level. And it's so complicated I can't even remember exactly the final conclusion we came to. And I like talking about relationships and stuff. That's like, men do this. Like, not all men. Some men are just have no idea what they're talking about. They're just terrible. They don't think about like dating in the same way that like men who get a lot of dates kind of do, because it's a big world out there. There's a lot of people, and a lot of times you have to go out and date them to really kind of figure out what you like, what they like about you, how you exist in the dating world. It's very tricky, right? So you kind of, there's not enough time in a lifetime to be bad at dating. So it's really just time efficient to get really good at dating. So that's why I say I've never gone on a bad date, because I never have. It's literally never happened for me. Every date I've ever gone on has been good. It is not one has gone bad, has gone south. Now and that includes people where 10 minutes in, I will not go on a second date with this person. I would never be in a relationship with this person. But I still had a good time, right? And you need to get better at dating so you can potentially, develop a relationship with the person if they are somebody you want to be in a relationship with, but also at the same time be improving your skill at determining whether or not there's somebody you'd want to be in a relationship with. So you're kind of honing 2 skills at the same time. So it just makes sense that, and I'm sure women kind of do the same thing, but to talk about that and analyze that and start to point out how you talk about how you found those red flags in somebody you've dated, and really narrow down all aspects of it, really.
Anxiety and religion. I study religion a lot.
I really like talking about anxiety because I suffer from it. And I function with it. Like I've told somebody, I remember I told this person recently, like a year ago, that I'm totally comfortable. Like, yeah, I have anxiety and I thrive within having anxiety. And they were kind of shocked. They're like, well, what do you mean? So I told them, I think that it causes me to overthink. It clearly causes me to overthink, which can be annoying and definitely caused issues in my like teen years and early 20s, but it doesn't cause me a problem anymore, because I understand that that's what's happening, and I like that I overthink things. I like that I'm very thoughtful and I guess deep, that I can sort of hyper focus at times that actually can sort of benefit my life in a lot of ways. Now, it can be detrimental, it can get in the way of certain things, but since I fully understand that it can and will get in the way of things, that really limits its ability to get in the way of things. Because, like I said, you have anxiety, you have anxiety, you're going to get through it. You can sometimes even anticipate it, right? Like, oh, I'm about to walk into a difficult situation that is likely to cause me anxiety. This is going to suck, but I'm going to get through it. I'm going to be fine. I've had anxiety 100 times before. This is that. It can be rough. It can really suck. It can occupy your brain to where you can't really focus on other stuff. But guess what? It's always going to be temporary. So I love talking about that with people who also have anxiety, and kind of like, I feel like it empowers them to see somebody like me who kind of just embraces it, kind of just says, hey, I have this. I don't even know what I would be like without it. It's a good thing, ultimately. At the end of the day, it's a good thing I have it. And I genuinely believe that. And it's crazy, but I believe it.
Study, I just mean listen to a lot of experts on it. I spend so much of my time listening to intellectuals, all different kinds, all different perspectives, just trying to make sense of the world and learning as much as I can, figuring out my own perspective on the world. I'm trying to think of what else I was going to say. I guess this is another part of it. I was taught growing up to be ashamed. This is kind of interesting. Like, they want you to be like a traditional woman and be like, accept that you're a woman and like be a woman and be feminine and submit, blah, blah, blah. But Christians forget something. Conservative Christians make being a woman feel like a curse. It feels horrible.
Yeah, that's a core part of the religion. Humanity is doomed to original sin because Eve did whatever.
Because you're like, why do the boys get to do everything that I want to do and everything that is fun? And why do they have so much more freedom than me? And why is the only role of mine to be this specific way? Like, I hate being a woman. I hate being feminine. Femininity is weak. That's another thing they teach you. I was bullied by my brothers and other boys for being a girl and being feminine. I was bullied and shamed and made fun of. Like, being a girl is bad. It's weak. It's pathetic. Like, you're just a girl. You're stupid because you're a girl. So all of that. So I was really ashamed of femininity. And can you tell that I've learned to embrace it? I don't even know what I was showing you. I was trying to show you my room. Okay.
Yeah, lots of flowers, lots of purple.
So that's another part of my journey. It's been accepting.
I kind of noticed, though, there's I feel like you've embraced certain parts of femininity and not other parts.
My femininity.
I'll leave it at that.
Embracing it and feeling the strength in it and admiring the femininity in other women. And I'm not at all shaming the masculinity in women because I think all of us are a mix. And I love different, like, masculine things. That's always going to be a part of me. But yeah, really embracing like the very girly, very feminine part of me as well.
That's another thing that's kind of seems little sus about both like religious men and other groups of men. The kind of rejection of their own femininity is bizarre because I don't see why they do it. It just seems weird. It seems like they're putting in an obstacle in their own way of connecting with women. I mean, it's hard to really quantify what femininity truly is. But I don't know. I like some stuff that like men are just not into. Like I like musicals. and that's only caused me to become closer to women, like, and build stronger bonds with them.
It's been huge in my growth, like accepting the color pink. I have fully accepted pink because pink has always been my favorite color, but for about 10 years I used to say my favorite color is green because I was ashamed of pink. But now
What?
I can say that pink is my favorite color and green is my second favorite color.
Nah. Nah, green's terrible. What are you talking about?
Also, like, I'm gonna get
Blue.
hot water for saying
Blue is where it's at. It's got nothing to do with masculinity or femininity. But blue, just aesthetically best color.
like feminine and masculine. Just take those terms lightly. I actually have a very complex understanding of it. That doesn't make sense, but I understand like the nuance of like you shouldn't call anything really feminine or masculine because what do those words mean?
Maybe it's because I really like the sky and I really like water. And growing up like on the Great Lakes, maybe that's got something to do with why I like blue so much. I don't know.
Like you can't just associate like strength with masculinity because that like infers that femininity isn't strong. Like women are strong as well, so it's not just a masculine trait. So obviously there's a lot of complexity. But YouTube doesn't make any room for complexity. People just fill in the blanks.
Well, they have to be fair. Like, how could they not fill in the blanks? You can only make so much content, and you can really only dive into a topic so much, right? Like, if I were to get into every detail about your other video I reacted to, I could add another like 4 hours onto what I already made. But then I'd be going into like insane, painful detail of everything that's said, and that just isn't practical and it's not entertaining. So like you're right, it doesn't create room because then your video just isn't watchable. If it's like 10 hours of you talking about one thing in every possible angle you could.
I don't know. I hope like some of that. Oh, I'll share a little bit more. I have a like kind of a dark sense of humor. I really love dry humor. I love.
You need to get into horror films. Let me show you horror films. A lot of them are like horror comedies. I recently did a Chucky tier list. You would probably like the Chucky franchise. Let me show you horror films. You will like them. There's some very dark humor.
Of dry humor. The drier the better. As dry as possible. Like you think the person is serious. That's my favorite kind of humor, and that's my sense of humor, usually. I have a pretty good sense of humor. And I love humor, but...
I assume you've watched The Office. Watch The Office. And if you haven't, I'd be shocked if you haven't, but watch the British version, then watch the American one. Because the British one is like better, but it's shorter. So in the long run, you're going to get more out of the American version. But I can't imagine watching the American one and then the British one. Because it's so short, you're going to feel so disappointed in the British one. But if you watch it first, you don't have that like context of what it could have been.
A specific kind. I love sarcasm as well. Very sarcastic. I don't know why that's important to me. I would love to be an actress. I would love to be an actress. It's still one of my goals.
Be in one of my films. I make films. My buddy's a writer-director. I've written a script for a film I want to make and co-direct. I mean, granted, the stuff I make is like low budget, but it's getting there.
Make my dreams.
But there's going to be somebody local. There's going to be people locally where you live who are probably making a short film, a film. Now, you describe where you live as being very like rural and conservative. So maybe not, but I don't know. There's probably something going on. And plus, you're a YouTuber. Like you are a part of a larger community, whether you feel it or you don't. And there's people making videos. There's opportunities to act. Now that involves collaborating with people, which is like a whole other thing. But it's something you could definitely get into.
My other dream is to be a YouTuber. Oh, I'm a writer as well. That's something else people don't know. I'm a writer. I love
What have you written? What have you written?
to write short stories, and I would like to write a book. I've had book ideas in my head, like the same book idea since I was a teenager, and it's stayed with me this whole time, and I've written some of it, but I would really love to do that.
That sounds very interesting. You talk about being an artist, and now you talk about being a writer and having this idea that you've had for a long time. I'm very interested to hear what that idea is. I've written a movie script that was also in my mind for a long time, right? And a movie script's different because it's very easy, well, for me anyway, to visualize it, to be like, see exactly how it is. And since, like I said, my best friend's a writer-director, I got to be there as he like came up with ideas for scripts, developed the script. He he wrote scripts and then turned them into films. So you get to see that like translation from the page to the screen, and like that allowed me to be able to write a script, and while I'm writing it, even before I wrote it, literally see the film in my mind. Now the film doesn't even exist, it's just a script, but I have like an idea as to how to get like a lot of the shots and stuff. I zoomed in again. It's so tricky. Zoom out, you dirty dog. Well, that's annoying, incredibly annoying. But we'll adapt. So it allowed me, when I was writing that script, to come up with a method of, it just made the whole writing process so much easier, as I knew how to write it, like what to put in and what not to put in, if that makes sense. And I talked to a coworker who's writing a book and has been writing it for a long time, and we talked about how it's like a totally different way of building like a scene, building a setting, building what's happening, because in writing a book you don't have the luxury of like showing somebody a moving picture. So when you're like building a scene in a book, you have to like describe the setting and all this stuff surrounding, and describe like what the character's feelings, whereas you do that in writing a script, but a lot is kind of implied, where you kind of, through what the characters are saying to each other, you kind of like put the pieces together as to what they're thinking, what they're feeling. In a book, you do kind of have some advantages that you can describe that. And I think that's why a lot of books end up being better than film adaptations, is because although you can't convey that like in a non-verbal way, even though you don't have the advantage of the whole moving pictures element to just directly show certain things, you do have the advantage of describing, of showing it in the way that a book does, of exactly what people are thinking and feeling, that you just can't really communicate in the same way in a moving picture.
I think I'll just end it there. I feel like there's other things I've missed, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about childhood and background, and try to add some complexity and some nuance and some understanding to my perspectives and to like show them.
There we go.
When
It's
I
kind of
say I'm
better.
a feminist, like what does that mean? It doesn't. It means something so different than what people assume. It comes from a place where of being so, like, having so much internalized hatred towards women and to myself, that to be a feminist and to like embrace that all it is saying like women can be proud to be women, we are strong, we are brave, we are everything, powerful, we can be independent, we are as good as men. We are as good as men, that's it. And then
Well, where that gets confused is most of society doesn't exist in the context that you exist in. They don't have the upbringing that you had. They don't live in this patriarchal environment that you grew up in. So when most people just exist in an environment of equality, and then they see stuff of women making more money than men, doing better in education, the entire legal system being like basically rigged to favor women, they see these massive disadvantages that men have. So then when feminists fight like actual patriarchy, it gets very complex, because that just doesn't exist for a giant portion of women, right? They just aren't subject to that at all. So it comes across as though you're trying to take a system that already is entirely disadvantages men and make it disadvantage men even more. That's where the confusion is.
and there's other things too. There's so much, but I mean, because the other thing I didn't even touch on is that, and who's here right now? Has anybody made it? Comment flower if you made it this far.
I'm gonna do it.
I really care about men as well, and I've never talked about this really either, but hopefully you can sometimes sense this, because I have a lot of male viewers, but there's so much complexity to this as well. But yeah, I really care about men's rights. I care about men's mental health. I really, really, really want to see a world where men can be free to show emotion and to cry.
I don't like how zoomed in this is.
Weakness without being rejected,
Other way.
to show vulnerability.
How did I do that?
I want men to hug each other in big bear hugs, and I want men to just really embrace that fullness of being
Weird.
human with no shame. I hate all of.
All right, I was distracted with adjusting my zoom. There's probably a way to just manually zoom or like turn off the zoom feature. I kind of never needed to zoom, but she said it like men in a group hugging each other. What? I know what you mean. You want men to be like more open and have better friendships in their lives, which would allow them room to advance as people and have somebody to talk to. A lot of men do have that. They just aren't very open with that, or it exists in like one or two very close friendships they have. But for some men, they don't have that at all, and they don't even begin to have the understanding to be able to utilize something like that, which is unfortunate.
With the pressures that men feel to be a man, and I do think that a lot of it is put on them by other men, but I'm learning that also, I guess, women do put on some pressure on men as well to act a certain way.
Yeah, there's a lot of videos out there of men telling a story of, and women telling stories of, say, for example, say his like mom passes away and he's at the funeral and he cries. Women, and this happens like way more often than it should. Oh, that woman literally instantly loses any attraction she had for him because she now sees him as weak because he cried because his mom died. Stuff like that, like all the time. All the time. Like there's so many examples of it. It's absurd. Or just other things. So a lot of this, like toxic masculinity, if you want to call it that, a lot of it's very perpetuated by women.
But not me, and not all women, and not most people. I think most people really want to see a world where men are.
And a lot of women who would do that would also openly say, oh, men should be more in touch with their feelings. They should be more open with their feelings, this and that. But then at the end of the day, as soon as that man is, they're out of there. They want nothing to do with them. Right? So a lot of women, a huge portion of women are just paying lip service in that way, where they say they think this thing, but then in reality, the moment that man shows any sign of that, they are out. It's crappy.
Safer, which is such a weird thing to say, but like, where men don't have to be so afraid to show themselves and fear rejection. Yeah, there's a lot to that, because I mean, there's so much like men struggling with mental health, depression, like a lot of suicides are men, most, I think, something like that, but all those things. And I think
well, if you do care about those things, then what you should do is openly promote changing laws that epically disadvantage men. Men are also the giant majority of people in prison. Women get away with all kinds of crimes that if a man did, he'd be in jail, he'd be in prison for. And women do it and they don't get in any trouble. Happens all the time. Literally happened to me 2 days ago. I was assaulted by a woman, and if I had done that to her, I'd be in jail right now. Right? It's what it is. It's yeah. It's you men have to exist in a world that is hugely rigged against them, right? I know that's not your experience, but for the majority of men in the Western world, that is the existence. That's just reality. That's just society. That's what's happening, right? You look at like any kind of statistics, you're going to see a huge bias against men. And another thing is like children, right? Like family court, enormously rigged against men. Women get away with abusing children on a regular basis, doing the most god-awful stuff imaginable, and then they still get the kids. It's crazy. It society and the legal system is so incredibly biased against men. It's disgusting. So yeah, men have enormous issues. They have to live in a world that hates them, right? You talk about your household hating women. The rest of the world, like the huge majority of everyone else, lives in an existence where there's enormous hatred towards men, and a lot of that comes from feminism. And yeah, it's a very unfortunate world we live in.
Whenever I think of like men that I care about, I always think of my little nephew, who's very young, but my little nephew is so sweet and big-hearted and just the most precious golden boy. And like golden as in like the stay golden pony boy. But it breaks my heart, and I'm so worried for him that he will be bullied and people will hurt him because he is sweet and wonderful and has emotion and deep and intelligent, and like I'm so worried to see him close himself off and be told that he can't be himself. Anyway, that's that. That's a lot of rambling. Let's see how this goes. Comment the secret word if you made it. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just one more thing I want to say really quick.
Now, if you made it an hour and 2 hours into this video, comment in my comments. Say potato. Or no, say potato. Just do it. Whatever.
People accuse me of not being happy, but I just want you guys to hear that I was struggling so much and so deeply when I was a teenager. That's when I really needed help and I was struggling so much. But I'm so much better, and I'm still struggling in a lot of ways, but I feel so much more capable than I did. And that's been through only a lot of personal work. It doesn't just happen. It's a lot of work that you have to do. But I feel more capable and I'm very well. And I post a lot of sad things or me struggling on bad days because I think it's important to share that so other people can relate to it. But also know that when I'm having good days and happy times and good memories, I actually just forget to press record because I'm so busy living my life and experiencing those happy feelings and good days and good memories and just living life that I just forget to record it.
Record some of your art and record some stuff talking about your writing. That's nice and positive. And record some more stuff outdoors and showing off, show off stuff in your locale to an extent. Hide where you live for sure. Like, you don't want people like finding where you live. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear like what your writing has been about. I love that when somebody has an idea for a very long time. It's usually because it's very personal and it's allowed them time to like think about what's good about it and think about what's bad about it and kind of remove the bad stuff and add in more good stuff, right? Like a lot of stuff is just very rushed. The recent Beetlejuice movie, very rushed. Very, like, it feels like they wrote it in a couple days and filmed it in a couple days. Just didn't give it enough thought. They didn't focus on the good ideas and they allowed bad ideas to slip through, which is usually going to happen because it doesn't have enough time. So when somebody has this idea that's been cooking for a very long time, it's usually going to be a really good, really cool idea. Like the movie script that I wrote, that I've been thinking about for a very long time, is about a college kid who gets superpowers, but it's more so just about his like personal relationships, like with his girlfriend and with his best friend, and kind of how he functions in modern society, just as a person, just as a human being that exists. It's a very basic story, but it's very it's one that people like won't have seen that exact thing, if that makes sense. It's just showing a part of society that never really gets shown. I could talk about it for hours. I won't bore you. I won't bore anybody, but it is it's got some really cool ideas in there. And yeah, I think yeah, let's see what else she has to say. There's like another minute.
So I'm sorry, but just know that I'm happy like 65% of the time. Maybe 85% of the time I'm doing pretty well.
That's a huge jump. 60 to 85? Whoa.
And then there's obviously dark times and there's so many struggles behind the scenes. Like, just know that people are so much more than their 15-minute YouTube video. Let's try not to assume. The assumptions are killing me. Okay, that's it. Bye.
Well, people can only assume, right? They can't. A 15-minute YouTube video, you're not going to get any like really deep idea of what somebody's perception truly is.
I'm recording this at night, so I'm going to say Have a good night.
Don't let it get you down, and you also have a good night.